Joining me on the phones right now, Senator from the great state of Texas, also a great podcaster. It's Senator Ted Cruz here on the Chad Hasty Show. Senator, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Chad. It's great to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. Obviously, a very busy time in D.C. We'll get to the latest with the impeachment trial here in just a second, but I want to say congratulations to you. You've got the #1 podcast in America.
Well, thank you. It's been a pretty wild ride on that front. We launched the podcast last week, right when the impeachment trial started, and it's called Verdict with Ted Cruz. And what I've been doing is every night when the trial concludes, I get in the truck and drive to the studio, and that night, real time, provide my thoughts on what just happened, try to explain the facts, which are really complicated, try to explain the legal arguments, and try to explain the constitutional law at issue. The whole thing's about 25 minutes long. And, most of them I've recorded. The first one we started at 2:46 in the morning because the trial had gone on till 2 a.m. But we record them, we put them out, and it went from zero, from not existing, to rising up the charts. And as you noted, it's now the #1 podcast in America. We've had over 1 million downloads. And you can just go to verdictpodcast.com, verdictpodcast.com. You can get it there. You can get it on Apple or Spotify or any place you can get podcasts. It's there. And I think the reason, Chad, is people want substance. They want to understand what's going on. And if you turn on cable news, you just see people screaming at each other,
right,
and using 30-second sound bites. And people are interested in actually understanding, but nobody has the time to spend 13 hours watching C-SPAN and listening to this whole thing go on. And so we try to make it short and digestible. We try to have, a comment I hear a lot from folks who listen to it is that when they listen to it, they learn something. They come away with something they didn't know before.
Right.
And we also try to have fun, to cut jokes and have a good time. And so that seems to be something that people are looking for.
No, and that's exactly, Senator, why I've enjoyed the podcast is because you get into the actual legal and constitutional arguments. And that is something that the House managers really haven't cared about too much, and it's something that the news organizations don't really care too much. Is the actual the actual constitutional arguments that are made. And as you brought up on the podcast, there haven't been a lot of constitutional arguments being made by the House managers.
Well, that's true, and that's because their case doesn't survive the constitutional standard. And so from their end, their case is real simple. They hate Donald Trump with an infuriating rage that pulses through them. They've hated him since the day he was elected. They're mad, really, at the American people for daring to elect President Trump. And they've been trying to impeach him since the day he got elected. A lot of the Democrats were very candid back in November 2016, calling for his impeachment then, before he'd been sworn in, before he'd done anything, before he picked up the phone to Ukraine. This, at the end of the day, has nothing to do with Ukraine. This has to do with partisan anger from the Democrats trying to overturn the last election. And even more importantly, they're terrified that if the American people have the chance to vote this year in November with Donald Trump's name on the ballot, that he'll get reelected. And so this was a desperate effort to say no to the voters. You can't vote for Donald Trump. It was, in a very real sense, trying to cheat the election. But that is not a legitimate use of the Constitution's impeachment power. The Constitution provides impeachment for treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. And the House managers didn't come remotely close to even alleging treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. And that's why, in all likelihood, tomorrow, the president will be acquitted. He will be found not guilty on the merits because the House managers didn't satisfy the constitutional standard.
Visiting with Senator Ted Cruz here on the Chad Hasty Show. You said tomorrow is when you think that's going to happen. Why tomorrow and not today, and why not Monday? What do you think is going to happen today?
So procedurally, where we are, the trial will reconvene at 1 p.m. today, and that's under the Senate rules. We come with the impeachment trial always starts at 1 p.m. The first order of business is a motion, whether it is in order to call additional witnesses or subpoena additional documents. Now, this is not the question, as many of the media frame it, of whether we will have witnesses. There have already been 17, actually 18 witnesses, if you count the Inspector General that the House refused to send over to the Senate. There have been 18 witnesses. We've listened to hour after hour after hour of testimony and evidence and legal arguments. The Senate has had a fair trial. We gave both sides a full and fair opportunity to present their case. And at the end of that, the House managers failed to meet the constitutional test. I think based on the public announcement, we now know the Democrats are going to lose the vote today. They're not going to get 51 senators to vote to bring in additional witnesses. Now, that's good, because if they had, what that would have done is just drag this on for weeks or months. The Democrats wanted to do that because they know they haven't won. They know the House managers didn't prove their case, and so their only remaining strategy is just drag this out and delay it and try to go on a fishing expedition, try to bring in any witness they can to see if they can find something
right.
that the president may or may not have done wrong. And that's not what impeachment is for, is to just have it be a constant fishing expedition and persecution. So we'll have the vote on that today. That will follow 2 hours of argument for each side. So for the first 4 hours, it'll be the lawyers arguing back and forth, and then we'll vote. After that, I expect the Democrats will try to bring a whole bunch of motions that they're just going to be ticked off. So they'll bring a bunch of motions, and I think we'll just sit there and let them kind of tire themselves out. Tonight may be a late night because they may do all sorts of motions to express their frustration. At the end of that, what I anticipate is that we will move to proceed to final judgment. I expect that vote to be scheduled probably tomorrow. It may end up being late tomorrow. But whenever we get to that vote, every senator will vote guilty or not guilty on each of the two articles. And at the end of the day, the president will be acquitted.
Any chance that the witness vote gets to 50-50 today? And if that happens, what happens after that?
Yeah, I think there's a real chance it's 50-50. The Democrats have 47, so their goal was to get 4 Republicans to vote with them. We know 2 who are going to do so. Mitt Romney and Susan Collins have both said they're going to vote with the Democrats to call additional witnesses. So that takes them to 49. There were 2 other senators who I would say were really in play. They were undecided about how they were going to vote, and they were Lamar Alexander and Lisa Murkowski. Late last night, Lamar Alexander announced he's going to vote no. He's not going to vote with the Democrats. He does not think we need additional witnesses because, for the very same reason I said a second ago, the House managers haven't proven their case. They haven't satisfied the constitutional standard. So that means there's 1 vote off the table. The only vote that is potentially in play right now is Lisa Murkowski. If she votes with the Democrats, it'll be 50-50. If she votes with the Republicans, it'll be 51-49. Either way, the Democrats don't prevail because the way the rules are written, in order to call additional witnesses, they had to get to 51.
Okay.
So 50-50 means it doesn't prevail. But I expect the Democrats to fight about that proposition. So I imagine if we are in a 50-50 world, there will be a whole lot of dispute from the Democrats on what to do then.
Sure. Visiting with Senator Ted Cruz. I've got a couple more questions for you. One of them is this trial, who has it done more damage to, in your opinion, the President of the United States or Joe Biden's political future?
Not even close. It's done much more damage to Joe Biden. In fact, I've wondered if this entire impeachment proceeding was paid for by the Bernie Sanders for President campaign. The president's poll numbers, Trump's poll numbers, have gone up and gone up dramatically. I think the impeachment politically has played out very much like the Bill Clinton impeachment did. You remember before impeachment, Bill Clinton's support, his numbers were down. And then with impeachment, I think Republicans overshot. Mm-hmm. They overreached, and the American people said, why are you doing this? Well, get back to work instead of making this just a partisan fight. And that reelected Bill Clinton. Because Republicans impeached him, I think that reelected him. If you look here, President Trump's numbers have gone up dramatically since the Democrats started obsessing with impeachment, and they've really gone up in swing states, in states that are critical to win in 2020. At the same time, Joe Biden's numbers, look, when we're having day after day after day of debate over if Joe Biden is corrupt, and if so, how corrupt, and what are the details of whether Joe Biden's corrupt. That ain't good, particularly when Biden's whole argument is electability. That's his pitch to Democrats, is I'm the most electable guy to beat Trump. Well, if you're having weeks of arguments about whether you're corrupt, that really does do damage to the electability argument. And so I think the other Democratic presidential hopefuls sitting in the chamber are grinning ear to ear, seeing that, especially when the House managers, they spent probably 2 hours affirmatively making the argument. There was zero evidence. It was just sham. It was baseless to investigate corruption concerning Burisma, the corrupt Ukrainian company that was paying Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, $1 million a year while his dad was the point person on Ukraine. Well, when the House managers did that, I commented at the time, I said the House Democrats have made a decision to throw Joe Biden under the bus, because the obvious response, the necessary response that the White House lawyers had to go to is if they say there's zero basis for investigating corruption concerning Burisma and the Bidens, well, that means the White House lawyers have to lay out, here's all the basis for investigating corruption. And I think that did real political damage to Joe Biden, and that was a consequence of the Democrats going down this road of impeachment.
Senator, I want to pick your brain on this real quick. When it comes to Bernie Sanders, and I've asked a lot of Republican strategists this, including Jason Johnson just the other day, if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination for the Democrats, is that a gift for Republicans, or should Republicans not underestimate Bernie Sanders?
Look, maybe it's a gift, but I'm a big believer, don't underestimate. We have a divided, polarized country right now. I mean, it's half the country doesn't talk to half the country. At Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, you got family members that don't talk to each other. That we're all divided. We're all polarized. The left listens to media, the right listens to right-wing media. We've got different facts, different universes we live in. And the terrifying thing, look, Bernie is extreme. He is an avowed socialist. His policies would be catastrophic. I think it is entirely possible a Bernie Sanders is elected. And the country, you have just a couple 100,000 votes switch in 2016, and Hillary Clinton would have been president. That's how close that election was. It is entirely possible that Bernie Sanders could win, which means if he's the nominee or whoever the nominee is, we need to take it very, very seriously, because this is going to be a turnout election.
Right.
Every liberal in America will show up and vote because they hate Trump. And hatred in politics, that is a dangerous and powerful motivator. They will crawl over broken glass to vote against Donald Trump. And the big question that's going to determine this next election is, does everybody else vote? Do common sense conservatives vote? Do those who believe in rule of law, those who believe in free enterprise, those who believe in securing the border and defending our Constitution, do the rest of us vote? If even 2, 3, 4, 5% of us stay home, that's how you elect a Bernie Sanders. God help us. And so I don't dismiss the threat of Bernie in the general at all. I think this election is going to be a fight anyway it comes down to.
Senator Ted Cruz, appreciate you joining us today. And folks, you can listen to his podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz. And okay, I'll ask you this one real quick. Any other future podcast in the plans?
I think that's the plan, is to keep going forward.
All right.
And keep addressing the issues of the day, because I think people want to understand them, and with no BS and real substance, and in a format that's helpful and fun.
I like that. That's a good idea. I like it. Senator Cruz, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, my friend. God bless.
Have a good one. That's U.S. Senator Ted Cruz here on the Chad Hasty Show, and maybe a little bit of breaking news. He plans to continue podcasting. I like it. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.